Hello, I'm Professor Mary Horgan, President of the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland. The Royal College of Physicians of Ireland is the country's largest and oldest postgraduate training college. RCPI was founded in 1654 and since that time has trained and educated doctors in Ireland and globally. Some of my predecessors are well-known names in medicine, and they include Robert Graves of Graves' disease fame, Cheyne and Stoke of Cheyne-Stoke breathing fame, and Dominic Corrigan of Corrigan pulse fame. Two of our biggest faculties are in internal medicine and pediatrics. We train our doctors to be the best they can possibly be and provide quality care to the patients that they serve. By joining the internal medicine residency program within the college, you will be part of our community. The college has global reach. It's there to support you and to provide you with the best possible training. Ireland is well known for its bedside teaching, and this is one of the foundations of medical education that cannot be superseded by online or blended. It is so important that we listen to and hear the concerns of our patients so that we can provide the best care possible. I would encourage you all to apply for our residency program and very much welcome you to Ireland. Ireland is known as the country of 1,000 welcomes. We have a diverse population, we are warm people and very inclusive in our ability to integrate into our society. I very much look forward to seeing you in the hospitals here and giving you the best education and training that's available to any doctor. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this information session on residency training with the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland. My name is John Magner, and I'm Head of International Affairs at the College. And normally at this time of the year, I travel to the Gulf area to meet doctors who are interested in coming to Ireland for their residency training. However, because of COVID, I cannot travel at this particular time. So instead, myself and my colleagues have put together this information session for you, and hopefully we'll answer some of the questions that you may have if you're thinking about coming to Ireland to undertake your residency training. So tonight I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to Ireland, talk to you a little bit about our college, some of the key features of our training program, and some of the services we do offer as well to those doctors who are traveling to Ireland to make that transition a little easier for you. As my colleague Danielle has said, there is no need to take any notes during this presentation, as it will be available for you tomorrow morning on our website. Furthermore, if you have any additional questions for us, please feel free to email us, and myself or one of my colleagues will get back to you as a matter of priority. A a little bit about Ireland itself. Known as the Emerald Isle, Ireland is an island in Western Europe, and we have a very strong and proud history and culture. In terms of connectivity to the Gulf area, pre-COVID, there were daily flights from Dublin to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And while COVID has interrupted this flight number, there are still scheduled flights available on a weekly basis. As a country, we're a small country. You can drive, for example, from coast to coast. That's from Dublin to Galway in just over 2 hours. And we also have an excellent national rail and bus service connecting Dublin and all of our other major towns and cities. Our population is around 5 million, of which 1.4 million is in Dublin, our capital city. Internationally, we are known as a safe, stable, and friendly society. And finally, our climate is very different to that what you experience in the Gulf area. We have a mild Atlantic Ocean climate with an average temperature of about 10 degrees. And in summer months, our temperatures may reach late 20s, early 30s, and in winter may get to a little bit below zero. But predominantly, we have a very mild climate. As a country, we have a very proud scientific and medical heritage. And on this slide here, you'll see photographs of Dominic Corrigan and Robert Graves, both former presidents of our college and leading physicians in their day. Indeed, it is from the work of the likes of Corrigan, Graves, and Stokes that the college has developed to being one of the leading international medical graduate training colleges in the world at this time. In terms of our global importance, Ireland's medtech sector has become one of the leading clusters for medical device companies in the world. For example, top 10 world pharma companies have bases in Ireland. We have over 75 pharma companies operating in the country, of which 40 are FDA approved. Pre-COVID, 50% of all of ventilators used in acute hospitals worldwide were either made in Ireland or had a significant component made in Ireland. And over 30 million people with diabetes use Irish-made injectable devices. And a third of the world's contact lenses are made in Ireland. And despite being one of the smallest countries in Europe, we are one of the largest exporters of medtech products in Europe. And the reason why I'm emphasizing these facts to you is to demonstrate that because of our importance and the number of companies in Ireland, we have a very strong basis for research and partnership with industry in Ireland, all of which feeds into the quality of training and research opportunities that we do provide in our hospital sites as part of our residency training program. Before I go on to talk about the college itself in more detail, I want just to give you a very brief overview of the structure of postgraduate medical training in Ireland. When I traveled to the Gulf a number of years ago, one of the features that struck me around the organisation of training in your countries was that there was one single body responsible nationally for all postgraduate medical training. So in Saudi Arabia, it was the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. In Kuwait, it was KIMS. In Oman, it was the OMSB. And that made the engagement with postgraduate medical training bodies somewhat easier than what it is in Ireland. In Ireland, if you want to study medicine, pediatrics, obs and gynae, pathology, public health, or OCMed, you will join the RCPI, or the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland, as we are the parent teaching body for these specialties. However, if you're interested in surgery, anesthesiology, general practice, ophthalmology, or psychiatry, you won't join the RCPI, but you will join these individual training bodies. Now, while we are separate bodies, because we're a small country, we do work very closely together. So if there is somebody out there this evening who is interested in, for example, general practice or surgery, if you forward your name and details to me, I will make sure that it's passed on to my colleagues in our sister colleges. So now a little bit about the RCPI itself. First of all, I'd like to introduce our president, Professor Mary Horgan, who is consultant in infectious diseases in Cork University Hospital in the south of our country. First of all, the RCPI is one of the oldest postgraduate medical training bodies in the world. We were established in 1764, and since then our mission has been to train, educate, and develop doctors for current and future world health needs. Our vision continues to be to lead excellence and quality in medical practice, and we do this through world-class training, education, and healthcare improvements in Ireland and internationally. Even though we are based in Ireland, we have fellows all over the world, and today we have in excess of 3,500 fellows across the college, faculties, and institutes. As well as that, we have over 8,500 members at this stage, again across the college, faculties, and institutes, and a large number of these are based overseas, including in the Gulf countries. From a training point of view, we have over 1,500 doctors in training in Ireland at this time. And these doctors are registered on our basic specialist training program, which is comparable to your residency training programs, on our higher specialist training programs, again, which is comparable to your fellowship programs, and again, on our international clinical training programs. Within our international programs, we offer training at both residency and clinical fellowship level. And this evening, our main focus is going to be on the residency training programs that we offer. So why train with the RCPI? I think, first of all, it's important to recognize that the college is one of the tier 1 training bodies in the world, and we are recognized to provide training in 28 medical subspecialties. If you do decide to do your residency training in Ireland, you will be required to pass all stages of the RCPI examination as part of your training. And as such, you will be awarded college membership and the use of the post-nominal RCPI on completion of your training. And again, very important from a college point of view, the residency training program that you are now interested in is actually fully accredited by the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. And this is important from the college point of view to ensure that when you return to the Gulf area after completing your training, that your training will be fully registered and recognized, and you will be accredited to practice on the basis of your training in your home country. So what about the particular features of our residency training program? First of all, I think it's important to point out that your training will be in hospitals that are fully accredited by the college for training across Ireland. Your training is hands-on and not observership, and you will be supervised by consultant physicians who are registered with the college as trainers on our training programs. You will train side by side with Irish and other international trainees, and you will fully participate in clinical practice, including on call, as a core part of your training program. You will have the opportunity to participate in research, audit, publications, and teaching. And as well as the clinical training, you will also be provided with a range of courses in research, leadership, teamwork, and communications to complement this clinical training. You will be required to keep an e-portfolio during your training period, and you will be assessed on an ongoing basis in your training site by your supervising consultants, and you will have an annual assessment at college level at the end of each academic year. And then finally, at the end of your training, if you pass all stages of the membership exam as part of your training, and if you meet all of the clinical training requirements on your hospital site, your training will be certified by the RCPI, and you will be awarded a full certification which you can present on home to your accrediting body. So finally, in terms of supports that we offer doctors who are successful in getting a place in our program. When we introduced the residency and fellowship training programs a number of years ago, we recognized the significant challenges that doctors would have in transferring from the Gulf to Ireland to take up their training position, particularly in relation to registration with our medical council, getting your visa, making your travel arrangements, finding suitable accommodation, finding schools for family members if you require that, and also with the basics of setting up your bank, your mobile phone, etc. And as such, to make that journey easier for you, we engage with a company called Castell Education, and they provide a comprehensive service to doctors who are successful on our training program. And this is a service that we provide free to you if you are taking up a position in Ireland. So finally, that was a very brief introduction to Ireland and our training programs. As I said earlier on, if you do have any particular inquiries or if you want further information, you can then raise these as part of our chat on this webinar, or if you feel that you want to think about the issues that we've raised, please feel free to email us and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this webinar. You're all very welcome here. My name is Dr. Danny Cherian, and I'm a consultant gastroenterologist at Beaumont Hospital in Dublin, Ireland. I'm an honorary senior lecturer at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and I'm also the clinical director for endoscopy services at Beaumont Hospital. My role within the RCPI is as director for the International Residency Training Program. This exciting program has been developed to provide international trainees with world-class experience and training in general medicine. Our goal for the training program is to offer international candidates the same training experience as the Irish junior doctors. For example, study leave, lectures, on-call and clinical commitments will all be the same. We insist that the international trainee is an integral part of the medical team. In fact, we think it is critical for the success of the program. The ultimate goal of the training program is to offer candidates certification in general internal medicine, RCPI, as well as the membership of the RCPI by way of examination. This three-part MRCPI exam is a requirement to complete the residency. The residency is a 3-year program following internship from your home country. 18 months will be spent in a general hospital and 18 months in a tertiary level academic center. All of the standard general medical rotations will be provided, including but not limited to cardiology, respiratory medicine, geriatric medicine, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. A core academic program will be in place at each training site. This will include journal clubs, case-based small group teaching, grand rounds, and multidisciplinary team meetings. These are an excellent venue to discuss complex medical patients. The trainee will have a named trainer for each post in the rotation. The trainer's role is to train, support, and to regularly assess progress of the individual. The RCPI has an excellent track record of helping international trainees transition to the new home in Ireland. We are further developing clinical orientation programs to allow for new international doctors to acclimatize to Irish medicine and the various nuances that come from working in a new healthcare system. I do hope this has been informative, and I'd be delighted to take any further questions you may have. I wish you all the very best in your medical careers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Bukhari, and I was invited today to answer a few questions that might be helpful to you. So the first question is about how did I hear about this program? So I actually heard about it through a friend. It was during my internship here in Saudi, and my co-intern showed me a poster in the phone about this international residency program. As she knew that I graduated from Ireland and I was interested in internal medicine programs. So yeah, I heard about this program through a friend. Second question is, why did I choose this program? I would say I was in the same situations as most of you are in at the moment. It can be quite difficult to choose your pick, which program you should consider. At that time, I wasn't quite sure there was many different programs available in different countries and different structures. So what I did is I basically gathered as much information as possible about each program that I was considering, and I did ask trainees in each program. For this program, it was quite difficult because we were the first batch, so there wasn't many to ask about their experience. However, what helped me is that I did my undergrad in Ireland, and I know a few people who were in the PhD, which is more or less similar to this program. So I asked them about how are they finding it, and what's their feedback about the program. I would say what attracted me most in this program is that I've been in Ireland before and I know the healthcare system, so it's like I'm going back to a place that I know rather than going somewhere very new to me. And also the structure of the program was very clear. In my case, it was a 4-year program, 1 year in Saudi, 3 years in Ireland. And in the poster, they have columns in each year, what to expect and what each year would be involving. So it looked a clear program to me, and that's why I chose it. For questions here about the experience with Castan. So after you get your acceptance from RCPI, the amount of paperwork that come afterward can be quite challenging and tiring. But RCPI have very nice additions. They are linked with Castan Educations, which is an institute who take care of your own mandatory registrations, fees application, and as well as that. Any small things about transportations, and the most important would be that they help you with finding accommodations, which can be quite challenging and difficult. But they were very helpful, and I'm sure they will take care of you when you reach that stage. And the last question is here about how I'm finding training so far. So currently, I am at the end of my 2nd year. My experience has been excellent so far. I've been in 2 different hospitals, and I've rotated into too many in different subspecialties. And that's actually what I like about this program. It's 3 years, so you get to rotate into more or less most of the medical subspecialties. Which will help you in deciding which specialty will you want to take after the training, and it also widens your horizons about different medical field and different patient cohorts. And so that's my experience so far, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, everybody, for that, and in particular thanks to Dr. Sherry and to Danielle and to Sarah and to Louise for supporting us with that. And also thank you for listening to us and for submitting some questions to us. So what I'll now do for the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes is put your questions to the panel. And I think the first question is one which I would take myself, okay, and it's in relation to the structure of the program and some changes that we've made to the structure of the program. This question asks, is it now a 4-year program like Dr. Sarah has completed or is completing, or is it a 3-year program? And just to confirm to you that we agreed with the Saudi Commission last year to change the structure of the program. So the program now is a 3-year residency training program in Ireland. You no longer have to complete 1 year in Saudi Arabia. So you complete the full residency training in Ireland, and that 3-year program is now fully registered with the Saudi Commission and will be recognized by the Saudi Commission. So there's no requirement now at this stage to spend 1 year in the kingdom. you'll come and do your 3 years training here in Ireland. So maybe the second question I put to you, Dr. Sherian, and that's somebody who is just preparing their application, and we will get significantly more applications than we would have places, and we will normally have to shortlist for interview. So what will be important in terms of completing the application to ensure that they will impress enough to be shortlisted for interview?
Yeah, thanks very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. So I think it's important when you're applying, and this is on the website, that you know the criteria that are required to make you eligible for application. And that to start with means you have to complete your primary medical degree in English. You have to have completed a structured internship. Sponsorship is required, and obviously that can be an ongoing, evolving situation through the process of application. Recommendation letters are required, and also importantly, you must not currently be on a formal residency program in your own home country. In terms of specific things that we look for in terms of elements of an individual's CV, always highlight the awards, distinctions, GPA that you've had going through as an undergraduate. This is often a filter that is looked at in terms of trying to put applications in order. I think it's also very helpful if you've spent some time in Ireland to make that very clear, because that is also, I think, an added advantage just from a cultural standpoint of having some experience here in Ireland. It's very important if you've done interesting electives, research, publications, to make those very visible and clear in the application that is put forward, so that the people shortlisting can mark points and award points from that. So those would be my main things: to make sure you fit with the criteria initially, but also make sure you highlight the areas like the academic achievements that you've done so far in your undergraduate career.
And a follow-up question here for you again, Dr. Sherian, is if I am shortlisted and I'm called for interview, do you have any particular advice in terms of preparation for interview?
Yeah, so I think interviews, and you'll all go through many more interviews in your career, and each one is a learning experience. But I think a couple of good points about any interview, and particularly this one, is be able to summarize the highlights of your CV in a relatively concise fashion. So usually we always start interviews with the opportunity for you to tell us a bit about yourself. And I think that gives you an open floor to maybe for 1 or 2 minutes explain that who you are, the strengths of your CV. And I think that's an important opportunity to really highlight certain elements that you want to get across. For example, if you placed first in the class, if you have whatever GPA, if you've done an elective in an interesting place, I think that's important. I think always answer the question. I think people are sometimes, when they're nervous, very good at talking a lot, but not necessarily answering the question that's been asked to them. So in a concise way, your response should answer the question that's been put ahead. I think it's a very important thing to know the program that you're applying to. So if I ask an applicant to tell me a little bit about the program, and I find that they don't know necessarily that it's a 3-year program or what the entry requirements are, that's a bit of a red flag to me. So I think it's very important to know what you're applying to. There will be some very straightforward clinical and communications based questions during the interview. Nothing that you won't be used to doing already, and that is something that we always ask to get people to try to see how they think in a pressure situation, and there's no way to prepare for that other than just being aware that this is coming up, and it's generally very straightforward questions, nothing that you won't already know the answer to. And finally, I think it's a good idea to have somewhat of a 5-year plan. So know what your plan is after residency training, where you see yourself working. Are you going to try and get onto a fellowship? I think us being able to see what your trajectory is, where you're going to end up, is very helpful as well.
Okay, thank you very much. One for you, Danielle. One of the participants here just highlighting that because of COVID, they haven't been able to take the English language test. So will they be disadvantaged at interview if they haven't the full English language requirements at this stage?
No, you'd still be qualified for an interview, and it does look better if you have an exam booked or if you tried to book exams in the past to show that you are trying to meet that requirement. But you're not disqualified by application, and you will have time after the interview to take the exam next year, early next year.
And maybe another question for you, Danielle. Somebody here asking, okay, about the extra exam that's referred to on the website and on the brochure as a requirement. Can you explain why, in addition to having the undergraduate degree and in addition to having the internship, that there is a requirement for an extra exam?
Yeah, so when you arrive in Ireland, in order to practice, you have to register with the Irish Medical Council. And to get onto the supervised division, which is what you'll be practicing on, they do require an additional exam. There's a list of these on the website. I'll briefly go through the ones that they accept. They're the PLAB Part 1, the USMLE Part 1 and 2, the MCCEE, the MCCQE Part 1, the Australian Medical Council exam, and then also if you've taken Part 1 of the Saudi board or Part 1 of the Arab board, you can also register with either of those exams.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, back to you, Dr. Sherian. Somebody here asking is, how will their training be structured in terms of their rotations, and will they be required to move between cities in Ireland in a particular year, or will they be located in a particular city for a year?
Yeah, so generally we try to give international residency trainees a very similar experience to that of the Irish candidates, in that you'll be going to hospitals that are the tertiary referral hospitals for approximately half of your training, so about 18 months, and about 18 months in more of a district general hospital sized hospital where there's still huge volumes of general medicine. And I think both have their advantages. For example, in the district general hospital, you'll find the volume of general medicine is extremely high, and the quality of general medicine is very high, whereas you might find in the tertiary referral or the level 4 hospitals, you might have more exposure to, say, more academic research or subspecialty interest, for example, things like interventional cardiology or things like that. So the way these programs are structured is over a 3-year period of time, you'll be rotating through all the core general medical specialties. And it's really focused around attaining your membership exams. So as you will all be aware, there are 3 parts to the exam, and the goal really, along with gaining medical and clinical expertise, is to pass those exams, ideally by the time you've finished your 2nd year in Ireland. Once you've completed your core medical rotations, then you can then potentially go on to, in your 3rd year, trying to get some exposure into a more subspecialty area. For example, if you wanted to get to do rotation in intensive care, neurology, hematology, dermatology, something like that, that can be potentially facilitated. But in general, to answer the question, are you going to be moving cities? We try to keep people on the same side of the country. Ireland is quite small, as Mr. Magner has said. So, for example, if you're training in Cork, we'll likely keep you in Cork, but you may be working between 2 different hospitals. If you're in Dublin, you'll be within Dublin for the duration of your training, but within 2 separate hospitals within the city.
Thank you very much. And maybe a follow-up question here is that, from your experience, what are the biggest challenges that doctors from the Gulf face when they come to commence their training in Ireland, in Irish hospitals? And how are they supported when they're starting in the hospital, which is new to them, a new culture, a new system, a new healthcare system? How are they supported on those hospital sites? Yeah, so I think that there is a big challenge, I think, but not an insurmountable challenge. I think what people will realize very quickly is that Irish training is very hands-on, and I think it's something we're very proud of. It's something that I think ultimately generates a very high caliber of physician. So there's a lot of learning by doing and being directly involved with patient care, obviously in a supervised fashion. So you'll find that from a very early stage, you'll be involved with doing, for example, clerking patients in, charting the medications, sometimes giving medications, reviewing the data, be it their lab results, their radiology results. And your notes will be part of the legal and medical record. And I think that it sometimes takes people aback a little bit, because they may not in their home country have been used to, as a 1st-year resident, for example,
being involved with charting medication or being able to start someone on an infusion of a relevant medication. But this is something that is expected in a supervised fashion. And I think you'll quickly see the benefit of that. Some other small nuanced changes is that in Ireland, doctors may be involved with taking bloods on call, for example, or catheterizing a male patient, doing blood gases, putting chest drains, that sort of thing, where that may not happen in other parts of the world. I think there's advantages and disadvantages to this, but I think certainly it's a skill that's always good to have as a training junior doctor. In terms of what supports that are in place, well, when you come in as a resident, you'll be part of a team. So from the very beginning, you'll be part of a team that is headed up by a consultant, and generally the consultant will have at least one registrar. So it's a senior member of the team who will be, on the wards with you. And then there are generally anywhere between 1 to 4 or 5 residents, depending on the size of the team in the hospital, that will make up the team. And finally, there'll be an intern. So your roles as residents will be to supervise the interns, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, delegating jobs to them, but also taking instruction and training from the people who are senior to you as well. So I think there's a very good support structure in place for that. The RCPI also has a program that we are developing to try and have an onboarding process when you arrive here. So essentially that's to go through some of the key elements of I suppose, how medical care is delivered in Ireland, the cultural differences to some of those elements as well, to try and get everyone up to speed fairly quickly before they actually hit the wards. But I think the key take-home thing is this is a very hands-on, very involved training experience. This isn't training by in a didactic lecture-based fashion. This is very much you're in the midst of things, which I think is something you'll find beneficial.
Okay, and maybe just a follow-up question to your previous answer. Somebody here asking for any tips about writing about career objectives at this early stage of their career in terms of that section of the application form.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be very honest and reasonable about this. I think the first career objective should be to obtain your training in internal medicine, because that's what you're applying for. I think that should be the first and most reasonable thing that anyone should say. And if you have a particular interest, for example, that you want to be a gastroenterologist, then have some sort of an idea as to where you might like to pursue that career and an understanding as to what that may entail. I always think it's a good thing if at an early stage you happen to know that you want to go down an academic track, for example, that you want to be involved in research, to mention that and maybe go one step further and discuss if you would like to do, for example, a doctorate or a thesis or a PhD as part of your training. Be concise, but be realistic. I think that's another important thing.
Okay, and another question again for you, Dr. Sherian. Somebody here asking, how will I be assessed during my training program? And you mentioned earlier on having to take part 1, 2, and 3 of MRCPI. If I failed my part 1 MRCPI and part 1, does that mean I cannot progress to year 2, or can I progress and take it in year 2?
Yeah, so it's not a barrier to progressing. However, it does put, I suppose, a little bit of extra pressure on year 2. So in general, as with Irish candidates, you are given more than one chance to pass the exam. It is a difficult exam, but with adequate preparation, it's a very passable exam. As you look around, everyone ultimately has their MRCPs. So it is something that is challenging, but is surmountable. So in terms of, will it stop you from going to year 2? No, but it does put, I suppose, a bit more pressure on completing then all 3 parts of the membership by the time you finish your training. And sorry, I didn't catch the first part of the question again, John, if you could remind me.
It was I missed it now myself. Sorry, I'll come back to it again in a second.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just pass on to Danielle at this stage. Danielle, somebody who hasn't booked a test yet, but is hoping to book one in January, will they still include that information in their application?
Yeah, it's useful to know which test you're planning to book and when you're planning to book that test. So definitely include that in the section for the English language test results.
Okay, and just going back to that earlier question, Dr. Aaron, it was, how will I be assessed on my training site?
Yeah, so the assessment is in sort of, there's a continuous degree of assessment during your rotation. So for example, when you finish each rotation, say for example, you finish, a 3 month or 4 month, depending on the hospital stint of gastroenterology with me, for example, I will have a form to fill out for you that will be part of your e-portfolio or your logbook. That will be a very concise but clear form about how you've performed during that. So those and it'll be an opportunity to also sit down with your trainer and identify any potential concerns that you have or they have at that part of your training. And that all goes on to your e-portfolio, and then that is then reviewed on an annual basis in a formal setting in the RCPI with an external invigilator to ensure that all the progress that's taking place is adequate and that you're not missing out on anything that's required to go to the next year. And of course, that culminates in a final year assessment to make sure that, for example, the memberships are done, the required coursework is done, and that there's no issues that have been flagged during the training. So it is an ongoing continuous assessment with certain formal stages at the end of each year.
Okay. And finally, Danielle, a last question for yourself at this stage. What certification will I get at the end of the 3-year period if I pass both the membership exams and if I also pass all my ongoing assessments on my training sites?
Yep. So once you finish, if you complete all of your assessments, you'll be given a certificate of completion of residency training. That's the certificate that you take back home with you. And also, like John said, if you pass the RCPI Part 1, Part 2, and the clinical exam, you'll also have the RCPI, which is the membership of the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland.
Okay. And 2 questions then have come in that I might just take myself. One person here is saying, I'm having difficulty finding a sponsor. Can I sponsor myself? And unfortunately, the answer there is no, because the agreement we have with the Gulf countries in terms of training is that we will take trainees from publicly supported systems, including the ministries and the postgraduate training bodies and universities. So unfortunately, we cannot take privately supported or privately sponsored doctors. And the second question that's come in from somebody is this scheme confined to doctors from the Gulf countries? And again, unfortunately, at this time, the scheme is confined to countries in the Gulf area with whom the college has an MOU. So doctors from outside the Gulf, unfortunately, cannot apply at this present time. So finally, a last question is coming in, but for maybe you again, Dr. Sherian, is in terms of these times of COVID, what implication is that having in terms of the organization of training, or would it have an impact in terms of my training program if I come to Ireland?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I suppose the first thing to be aware of is that COVID has hit. Obviously, it's a global issue, so this has forced every training hospital to reevaluate the way they deliver training, primarily because the demands in the system have, I suppose, created an environment where people need to roll up their sleeves and help the kind of catastrophic situation that has been seen across the world. So, for example, there have been a couple of unforeseen challenges that doctors within a certain specialty may have to be transferred to another specialty within the same, general medicine, obviously, but you might be moved towards the respiratory or infectious disease specialty because of a huge capacity increase in their cohort of patients. That's happened on a couple of occasions to try and fix the demand requirements or address the demand requirements that COVID has brought on. But the bottom line is all of these rotations will still be in general medicine, and the training and supervision will still be the same. In terms of safety, we haven't thankfully had any issues with PPE. We have strict protocols and algorithms in place, certainly in our hospital and in other hospitals around the country, in terms of how patients enter the hospital, be it in an emergency setting. If they come into the hospital and have suspicious features of COVID, they go down one pathway, and all of the patients go down another pathway, and they're cohorted appropriately. Patients coming in for elective procedures all undergo COVID screening, either that be a questionnaire or an actual physical PCR test. So I think there's a lot of, it's been a learning curve, and it's been an evolving process that is very different now compared to how it was 6 months ago when it started. But I'm confident that from a safety perspective, I don't have any difficulties with that.
Okay, thank you so much. And then one final question has just come in now and saying from a participant that I'm trying to book a PLAB test, but there are no more slots available. Any idea if there will be more in the coming months? And again, this has all been impacted by COVID. And again, it's something, okay, that we're quite clearly is creating a lot of uncertainty. But the only thing I would say to you is that you can still apply for the place on the program for interview, and the issue of the PLAB test will not arise until you're offered a place on the program. So there's still plenty of time between now and the time that you would have to meet that requirement to take a PLAB or one of the other tests that Danielle referred to. So I'm afraid that's it, and just say to thank you again to everybody for participating on this evening's meeting. A copy of the presentations and this discussion will be available on our website for you from tomorrow morning. And again, if you have any further particular queries, please send them in by email to us, and myself and my colleagues will get back as quickly as possible. And again, hopefully we will look forward to meet at least some of you, all of you, hopefully, at interview. And again, we look forward to getting back out to the Gulf as soon as travel restrictions are lifted. So good night and be safe, everyone. Thank you.